back to Real Estate of Mind. I'm Jamie Austin for another episode. And today's guest is Alvin Uy. And we are going to be talking today about ADUs. Does it sound exciting? Well, actually, it is becoming a very exciting topic. So, Alvin, welcome to the show. So tell us a little bit about yourself. So I know you didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to start building ADUs. So you have a little bit of background in investing, but you have an interesting history that didn't just wake up and start doing investing in ADUs. So tell us a little bit about yourself and most importantly, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. I'm actually very excited about this.
Yay!
So a little bit about me. I'm Alvin Uy. I'm a SoCal local investor.
I love it.
Wanted to be an investor for a long time. When I first read Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Oh, good book.
Took that purple pill and I'm like, you know what? I'm all in.
I love it. Yeah.
So, going back a little bit, my background is I'm a first generation immigrant.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
My parents came here when I was 12. They brought all of us. I'm like one of 5 siblings.
Wow. Okay.
Parents,
grandparents?
No, my parents, just my parents.
Parents and 5 siblings.
So they left their family in the Philippines to come from a very wealthy background, but my dad wanted to do his own thing. Okay. Decided to come here.
That was a very brave move because he left comfort and security there.
Yeah, not just that. So what happened was he actually disobeyed his parents by coming here. And so therefore, they've actually gotten kind of, I guess you can say, alienated from the family.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And they cut off and all that stuff. So when they got here, they pretty much spent all their money.
Wow.
Not realizing that, you come here, whole new world.
Yeah.
You have no, credit history.
Yep.
You have no job history.
Did they speak the language?
They spoke a little bit, but my dad was very introverted, so he couldn't get out of that a little bit. So he had some fears and limiting beliefs on his own. So he just kind of, things just happened where they just lost all their savings coming here.
Wow.
And so, we ended up living in a 1-bedroom apartment, all 5 of us, in like roughest areas of LA.
Whoa.
And it's still quite rough.
Yeah, that had to be a shock to your system.
Oh, 12. Yeah, quite a shock. Like, sharing a 1-bedroom apartment with my siblings. I was 12. My youngest sibling was 1.5.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a full range.
Because my parents just didn't know. I mean, they were of wealth. So we had like 18 maids in the Philippines.
Oh,
they come here, they had nothing.
Nothing. And no one.
And they didn't know how to cook. They didn't know how to like survive without them. Yeah, I mean it was a mess. And here I am. I'm like 12. I was like pretty spoiled. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, we're like like neighbors were feeling bad for us. They were handing out like giving us like food and all this stuff. And and that was my first recollection of wealth. And I didn't really understand until then that that's forever. My life's gonna be changed.
Wow.
So they were completely disowned. So they had no,
So that basis right there was like life altering.
Oh, it was traumatizing.
Yeah, of course. That was not only a shock to the system, but that was traumatizing. A little PTSD and a little bit like survival mode. What are we going to do? How are we going to do this?
For sure. I mean, like my dad's first job, he was a janitor.
Okay.
And that was my grandparents' first thing. They're like, if you guys are going to the States, you're just going to be janitors and maids. Why would you leave all this wealth? And
extremely well educated, I'm guessing, in the Philippines.
My dad was he was a mechanical engineer.
Oh,
although
my God.
He never actually used it because you can't just switch from here and use it.
And use it. Yeah.
May not even
You need visas. You need a streamline. You need a sponsor. You need.
They had their visas. They had green cards, so we were legal residents here.
Right.
But still
difficult path.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
So fast forward a few years later, I finally, like, my parents saved enough money to buy their first home.
Okay. And, good on them.
And that's when my parents kind of reconciled with their parents.
Okay.
And that's when I realized, oh wow, this is something that I should look into because all of a sudden I see the pride in my parents.
Homeownership.
Huge. And just proof of the fact that they got here and they
made it.
They were successful because of that.
That's amazing.
And so, ever since then, I decided, okay, that's what I need to do. Because,
That's a life lesson that is
because
huge.
I realized it, and I'm like, my dad left everything. He's trying to start his own legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
I need to extend that. It felt like it was my responsibility to do that. And so that's how I got into real estate investing, at least the idea of it.
Yeah.
And, at the time, I didn't know how to do that.
Uh-huh.
And I come to find out, to buy property here, you got to, at least at that time, I thought you need to save 20% down.
Little did you know there's creative ways to get around that one.
Exactly. So, so I, that's about the time I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I had a W-2 job. I started from scratch. I was a college dropout.
Okay.
So I needed to figure out how to kind of survive, and got my first job being a designer at some design agency here in Los Angeles, and got my start from there. And then from there, I decided, you know what, I got to make more money.
Yeah.
And then from there, I started my own design agency. After getting mentorship from another company where I got that job because, I figured I need to learn that business from someone that I could see myself being.
To emulate?
I mean, his name is Norm Ung.
Okay.
He was probably one of the top 5 agencies in Los Angeles at the time.
Okay.
And he was Asian. So I'm like, oh, okay, there's someone I could model.
Yeah.
And, I think I was there for about 7 years.
Yeah.
And I rose to this, basically being a director of that company. I was the senior creative director, so I pretty much ran the company.
Wow, that's amazing, Alvin.
Yeah, and then about that time, he decided, hey, I'm going to sell the company.
Do you want
leave. Pretty much, he offered me to take over, and I said, I can't afford this company. What are you thinking? Do you realize how much money you pay me?
Yeah.
So I decided to just go on my own, we had one dinner one time, and we actually started at lunch. Got a few drinks, and then they ended up being
the old lunch, the old martini lunch. Yeah,
I think he was offering me a higher position, take over the company, and that whole golden ball of chain.
Yeah.
And it was just a hard...
The velvet glove.
Yeah, it was hard a little bit. But then, I think it might have been the alcohol that spoke and said, you know what, Alvin, I think it's time.
That's awesome.
So
did you take over the company?
No, I said, I basically, I don't know what I was thinking, but I said to him, I go, look, if you're going to leave, I think I'm going to leave too. But maybe you can lay me off and give me some severance.
Oh, smart.
And of course, I immediately regretted that the next day.
Oh, yeah.
I got laid off a few weeks later, and I'm like, holy crap, what did I just do?
What did I do? I just shot my own foot.
And so I was pretty nervous at the time. I didn't know what to do. And I ended up just, I called all my connections, my friends, my clients, and said, hey guys, I'm out of work. I need a job.
Okay.
And I think they might have misinterpreted that. I was actually looking for another job, but they started sending me projects. Next thing you know, I got all these projects.
Oh wow!
And so, okay, I guess I'm.
So
it's
now
time.
You're independent.
Yeah, now I'm starting my own agency. So I started my own agency.
That's amazing.
That's about the time where real estate crashed.
2008.
Yeah, Woo! 2008. But I actually started investing around 2003.
Okay. All right.
So while I was building that agency.
So you were starting the baby investing at the same time, parallel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I read Rich Dad Poor Dad in 2000, 2003. Me and my girlfriend, who's my wife now.
Oh.
We got into looking at properties and bought our first house.
And if you haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad, that is a fantastic book to read. And not only that, but what I can also hear Alvin saying in the background is he actually surrounded himself with people that he could emulate, which is mentors. We all need mentors. You don't need to reinvent the wheel in becoming an investor. You just need to surround yourself with people that maybe have done it before. I love to say start being in a room with people that are smarter than you are. because you're always going to learn
Absolutely.
something. You're always going to be in a better place than you were. And, you know, they say, like, surround yourself with the 5 people who you hang out with are...
You are the average, the 5 people you hang out with.
That's exactly right.
I didn't know that then, but, you know, I think
Well, we're young. We learn that
Yeah.
later, but if you can think about that in terms of like taking that into an investing career with real estate, you know, it's not like people wake up usually in their early 20s. Some people do, but a lot of people don't, and they think, oh, I'm just going to start investing in real estate. It happens a lot like that. I'm building a career. How do I make more money? This is kind of a dead-end job, or maybe it's a fantastic job like yours, and you're like, whoa, I'm probably at the pinnacle of this, but is this really does this give me the kind of freedom that I want to have?
Exactly.
And then you start restructuring your brain and rewiring that as to what does freedom really look like? What does success really look like? Because success doesn't always look like a CEO position. A lot of times it looks like owning a lot of properties to where then your days are free and you get to go do other jobs that don't pay a lot but are so soul satisfying, right?
Exactly. I mean, look. I mean, you know, I was watching all these, you know, mentors that I had within that company, and there's a few of them who initially I aspired to because I'm like, wow, very successful designers have had their own agencies. And then it occurred to me one time, like, well, if they had their own agencies, why are they now working for this company? And it dawned on me, like, wow, you know what? This is not the exit I want. I don't want to be building a company just to end up working for another company once that company fails.
Exactly.
So I decided then, you know what? My exit strategy, I got to get back into real estate. And so that's when I started, while I was building my agency, I was already starting to invest.
Smart.
To make sure I'll have a backup plan. Real estate was my backup plan. But I always knew that real estate was my end game.
And I hear that more than you know. Like people don't even understand. Like we just got back from, you know, a seminar, my partner and I, and they just say when you really talk about an end game, real true wealth building. We've got craziness with the stock market. You know, inflation is still affecting people, job layoffs right and left. You don't want to sound like Henny Penny, the sky is falling, but nonetheless, when people, they're still saying real estate is still the safest investment that there is.
Yep.
It's a long-term game, but if you want to play the long term and you want to feel like you're really building generational wealth, it's real estate.
Legacy,
all that
stuff.
Real estate. Yep.
You got to do it. And so I started investing real estate, you know, as soon as I get some money, you know, made a lot of money in my design. So I'm like, okay, I got to just, every time I would buy something.
Smart.
Buy something. I was learning how to flip on the side.
And you figured out it didn't take 20%, did it?
Well, no, I wasn't that smart then.
Okay, so you had to take a couple. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like at the time, like my focus was on the design agency.
Okay.
And then, but I knew like I gotta buy some properties, and then it crashed. So I said to myself, okay, let me just focus on the design and wait for an opportunity to buy more.
Okay.
And then 2009 came around. At the time, my wife and I, you know, my wife is a realtor.
Oh.
So
how convenient.
Yeah, well, she and I started looking into getting a real estate license in 2004 or 5.
Okay.
So, you know, took the courses. I decided, okay, I don't want to be in sales, but I want to learn how to do this. But she got her license.
Oh, it's not easy.
Yeah.
People think it sounds so glamorous what I do, but it's not easy.
She is not happy showing houses and driving people around. It's not, you know, but she loved the investing part of it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, so we kept the license in 2008. It's about, we started our own real estate company.
Okay. All right.
And that's about the time, too, I started my agency. So I've got all this thing, like I'm just planting seeds everywhere.
Somebody had to be a broker in that family.
I had one of my best friends was a broker.
Okay. I started to say, because I'm a broker, I know if you're starting your own agency, somebody's got to be a broker.
Yeah.
So
we partnered up.
Okay.
And so we still have that business, actually.
Oh, good. Smart.
Yeah. And also, you know, so about 2013, I started getting bored doing all the design. And then, you know, and that's about the time I had my second child. And you know, I'm like, you know, what can I do now? I'm a product developer. I'm a designer. got all this expertise. I'm ready to do my own designs, and I got into developing toys.
Oh, you're just like a really lazy underachiever, aren't you, Alvin?
I am super lazy. Super lazy.
I love it. Isn't that amazing, though? Like, it sounds like, and this is what people talk about, like building a really full life. I think real estate is one of those things that gives you the ability to do things that are outside the box, that allows you to fulfill your life, because I'm sure probably the need to build toys wouldn't have come about had you not had 2 kids.
Absolutely not.
Right?
I mean, yeah.
There had to be something where you're like, I'm a creative guy. I have a design background. I have a really good track record of this. What if I do this? And?
Yeah, exactly that. So then that invention, that toy, ended up on Shark Tank. So we're...
And tell everybody a little bit about this groovy little toy idea that you had that ended up on Shark Tank, which was very cool.
The product is called Soap Socks, SOAPSOX.
Little plug there, and if you hadn't checked it out, they're really cool.
Yeah, so we were invited to go on Shark Tank. A scout found us on a trade show and said, you guys have a really cool product.
Yeah.
Why don't you guys pitch?
Yeah.
And we ended up on Shark Tank.
That's awesome.
Actually pitch, and we got a few offers, and we ended up walking away from $1 million buyout.
Wow.
It just didn't make sense for us at the time.
Okay.
So that business is still around. It's doing well. I am now hands off on it because I feel like I've done my job and I'm looking to pursue other passions.
Yep.
That's kind of why I'm back into real estate, because about 2019 when, COVID hit.
Oh, yes.
As you know, the design agencies and all the industries, entertainment, one of my biggest clients, everybody just stopped.
Yep.
There's like a freeze on everything. So, at that point, I decided, you know what, I don't know what I'm going to do now, but, I got all these energy still. I don't want to retire. I did try that for a little bit, and I got really bored.
Yeah, yep.
And I decided, you know what, what am I doing? Like, what's keeping me afloat right now? It's all my real estate. It's all my rental properties.
Yep.
And I lost track of my end goal, which I thought I'd do that later, but that later's here.
That
it's
later's now. Yep.
So that's when I decided, okay, let me jump back into real estate. And that's when I discovered ADUs.
And for those of you who don't know what ADUs are, they are accessory dwelling units. And just a little bit before we segue into what Alvin's expertise is, because and I love your story background. This is awesome. Because what you find is people's pathway to real estate and how they get into the expertise of this is always fascinating to me. But ADUs, like Los Angeles happens to be a megalopolis where there's no more land. So there's not like where I'm from originally, Texas, where we can build out. There's space. There's no more space here. So nobody has any place except to go up. And even then you need certain permits, and there's even limitations to that. So what people were doing, people that had maybe a particular size lot, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 square foot lot, if they had room, they were turning their garages into homes. They were building an accessory dwelling unit, meaning they would clear out the garage, they would add plumbing, electrical, and they would turn it into an income producing unit. However, when I started in the business, which was a little while ago, they had so much restrictions in this county of Los Angeles for doing that it almost made it really almost impossible to do that. People were doing it, but they were doing it on, on the fly and on the DL. And it wasn't, if the city found out, you could get fined. So they really made it really difficult. But when they really found out that there was a shortage of housing, they were like, all right, we're going to lift some restrictions. So around about probably 2016, 17, they started releasing a little bit of restrictions and making it easier to get permits, and then a little bit easier, and then a little bit easier. And then come about 2018, 19, it's like they even released even more. So, and it's been fascinating to watch, but they're really now giving homeowners an opportunity. And I will tell you, a lot of homeowners have moved into the the ADUs and are now renting out the front houses as a means to actually be able to still afford living in California.
Yeah, ADUs are amazing. It's everything. It checks all the boxes for me.
Okay.
Because it allows me to harness all my experience in design and development, product development. I see ADUs as another product.
Yeah.
And also my passion for real estate and just investing, and it's an accelerator to wealth and cash flow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I know a lot of people who might even consider California as a bad
investment because it's so expensive.
Because in California, they say you can't cash flow in California.
That's right.
But here's an opportunity, and it's being handed to you.
That's a very, very good point. And I hear the same thing. It's like everybody's fleeing the state of California because it's so expensive. The taxes are so high. All of that is true. But with the advent of ADUs, you have another potential income property right there on and some of these are being able to be built on a home that's outright owned.
Right.
So if you can find one of those, right, that has, the potential for building that, not only could you get a property where the taxes might be, or it's really beneficial for a homeowner that's been there forever. But even at that, even if you can find one that's, been paid for and you get a good deal on it and then you can add an ADU, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is because you can do this on zonings that are R1, which is basically majority of what's out there right now.
So R1 zoning just, is like basically single family only. So most of the time they were putting a cap on if it's zoned R1, and that means the only thing it can be on that lot is a single family home. No other income producing property. That's how the city looked at it. And now they don't look at it that way. So it provided it just opened up Pandora's box in terms of allowing for builders to get in there and go, whoa, this is now the gloves are off. Let's go for it.
Yeah,
go for it.
I mean, there are some challenges. There's some cities that are sort of, let's say, not happy with this because it's now by right.
Yeah.
A lot of the coastal communities, Huntington Beach, Malibu.
Yep.
And there's something right now going on where, I think Governor Newsom is actually suing Huntington Beach.
Oh, yeah.
For
trying to squelch it?
Yeah. Basically. So they're,
it's all right. We can get down and dirty here. It's fine.
Yeah. So I guess the point is that it's you have the right to be able to do ADUs in California. And so I would take advantage of it.
Yeah. And I do understand because I do specialize in the beach city communities from Malibu to Dana Point. So I get it.
Right.
They are very particular and they don't want, because I get it. What ends up happening is that if you open it up and everybody starts having an ADU, then your neighborhood, which looks and feels a certain way, can certainly change quickly.
Of course.
So you do get that.
And quite honestly, I look at this from different perspectives. For me, being an investor, I would probably not invest in beach cities for ADUs for a few reasons. Number one is there's not enough comps to support them.
Right. Yep. So, I would agree.
So you'll be pushing that barrier a little bit, and it's going to be much more difficult to get the appraisal value you might want.
Yep.
And that's if you are trying to refinance.
And even an uphill battle community-wise.
Oh, yeah.
To be accepted and to not, yeah.
I mean, they can effectively delay permitting process.
You have a city inspector that's not happy about it, and they're in the pocket of the so-and-so, and they're like, yeah, we might get to your permit 6 months from now, whereas everybody else is like, no, we'll push it through in a month.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
there's ways of making things really difficult.
Yeah, and so there's some pitfalls there a little bit, but not so bad, I would say. I mean, it really depends on your purpose for the ADU. I think ADUs are great. They will always give you some value. You just have to be careful about how far to extend that, because sometimes the cost.
Yep, that was one of my questions, because it seems like to me, one of the pitfalls that I find most people when they're like, yay, I can build an ADU, they're like, yeah, and then they get into it. But most people who are kind of novice builders, they don't really go with the end cost in mind. They just start kind of doing it, and then they realize, holy moly, I'm way over budget, and they don't get their, they don't really plan it out all the way, is what, am I right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to factor in the cost. You got to make sure you have the right architects. You got to make sure you have the right architects that would build for your budget. You have to make sure you have the right builders, the contractors that can actually produce it.
That have done ADUs too.
Yeah, that have done ADUs because there are specialists.
That's right.
And you just got to know your zoning as well. And if you were planning on renting it out, you have to make sure you don't overestimate your
what you
rental.
could get for it. Absolutely.
And you can't underestimate your budget either, because there's always something that goes wrong with any kind of build.
Yep.
It could, permitting could go round and round sometimes.
That's right.
And sometimes city inspectors will require a change.
Yep.
And you have to resubmit a supplemental plan. And it just
you have to plan. You have to plan for the. You have to plan for the unknown a little bit, and that is part of the budget. Is the unknown.
And, but if you get all that situated, by all means do the ADUs. If you can, if it makes sense.
Yeah. And I agree. Like, one of the things that I've heard nightmares are like people not really going with a contractor that has built ADUs. That's huge, because I don't know, my experience over the years, like, people have been all gung-ho about a contractor, and we've all heard the nightmare where they get the contractor going on the job, and then suddenly, 4 weeks in, you can't find them, they're not showing up on the job, and time is money is time, and suddenly you're over budget, you're not getting stuff done. God forbid, you're stuck, and then you're like going, well, I was going to be having this rented by August, and now we're into October, and, it's, And there's also, I would also look for ADU builders that have reviews. Look for them that have reviews. Somebody like yourself.
I mean, right now we don't do it for clients.
Yeah. Okay.
But
just for yourself privately.
Yeah, we're trying to build our own portfolio, and eventually I'm probably gonna start building a fund.
Yeah.
But we have our own construction team, but we're
that's
scaling
key.
up.
That is key.
It's key for time control and also budget.
Budget control. Yeah.
Budget control. Plus, plus I like being involved.
How long did it take you to get your team in place to where you could kind of say, this project's going to take about 2 months, 3 months, or whatever? How long would you say it took you to get that in place?
Well, I've been flipping houses since forever. Okay. So I did have some teams in place. So I've had vendors all along. Okay. And so about 2019 is when I'm like, I'm going to pivot to really focus on this stuff. Okay. And I had basically almost everything I needed at that point. So, and then that was
through years of putting that together.
Oh yeah, so years putting it together. But you can find people. It's just there's maybe a little bit harder these days, just because of so much building happening all over the place.
If somebody were going to decide, like, hey, do I have a potential for an ADU? What would you say to, like, a novice person who might be thinking, do I have an ADU potential in my home? What would you say would be the first things they would look at?
First thing is to check with your local municipalities to make sure you're not going to run into issues with, time and permits. Okay. And then I would...
Would that be like the Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety?
Planning.
Planning? Yeah.
Yeah, planning.
That's part of that. The LA Department, LABDLS, the Department of Building and Safety. I might have mixed that up. But
LADBS.
Thank you, LADBS.
LADBS.
I do get a little dyslexic.
That's in LA, but every city's got their own.
Yep. So, like, Beverly Hills is different from Santa Monica, is different from Los Feliz, is different from Silver Lake. So, yes, you want to check there. And sometimes you can just check the zoning. Zemus, I think, is still a site that you can look at zoning for that.
Zemus applies to LA County, Los Angeles. It may not necessarily apply to other...
Like Orange County or something, you might have to go to a different one.
But I would always check with the local municipalities first, and then get an architect that knows what they're doing.
And there are now, you could look up architects that specially build ADUs.
Yeah, it's getting a lot of popularity. So more and more architects are more adept with ADUs. Yep. But there are a few that specialize in it. and that's all they ever do.
Yep.
And those are the ones you want.
Those are the ones you want.
Those are the ones you want. So yeah, I think other than that, like, you know, I think ADUs just make sense.
Yeah. And also you have to kind of keep in mind, what is your ADU purpose for? Like, are you going to put your in-laws in there? Are you going to get college students in there? Or are you going to live in there? That would change your budget considerably. Wear and tear, like what kind of materials are you going to use? Do you want it really nice? Do you want a family member in there? Are you going to need it to be adaptable for wheelchair accessibility? What are your real needs for it? And then you got to think that with the end in mind, and then back it up and then figure it out.
Yeah, I would also add that, you know, it's probably the most cost-effective way to get another property or another structure to live in outside of buying a new property.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
Because, you know, the cost to build a second unit in your existing lot, it would be a lot cheaper than you buying a new house.
Okay.
So in that case, like, I think it totally makes sense, especially if you have family members that you want house. You know, that's why they're sometimes called granny flats.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, or if you are also wanting to invest, build more cash flow, passive income. Like you mentioned earlier, you can build ADUs, move into that, rent out the front house. It's cash flow.
Cash flow, and a heck of a lot more opportunity to get a better cash flow that way.
Yeah.
What would be the stipulation? Because I know that sometimes I look at houses and I hear my clients say all the time, oh, that's, we could turn that into an ADU. And then I look up and I'm like, oh, there's a really huge telephone pole there with lots of wires. And so you've got restrictions sometimes on a height build that you can not go up. So
yeah,
what do you
that would be, you'd have to get an architect to figure out, your setbacks.
And I've actually even had some people pay the city to move the wires. So
I haven't done that, but
it's not an impossibility. It's a costly thing, but I've seen people pay the city to come out and say, "Could you move those wires to that pole?" And so that they could build up. Yep. So there are ways you could work with the city, but it can be pretty expensive.
It could. Like I said, it all depends on what your exit strategy is, or at least your long-term plan with these ADUs. I mean, I think right now, like, there's a big shift to building ADUs more so than other things right now. And they're, I don't know if it's the housing crisis or the ability to build ADUs that's making that movement. But I would say probably both.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
a little bit of both. It's really hard to track that, but I think there's definitely some advantages to.
Do you think the attitude is like, I don't know where I'd go to buy something more expensive, so I might as well stay here and work with what I've got, and if there's any way that I can, like, make improvements on my current home. And build an ADU or potentially add some income-producing property here on my existing lot, why would I not do that?
Yeah, I think that's always that's what I would think first.
Yeah, because your tax basis is going to stay the same as whenever you bought it, so that right there is lower. Unless you're taking advantage of Prop 19, which if you're 55 and older, you can transfer your tax basis now 3 times in the state of California, anywhere, which has been a rule that's changed and significantly altered people's lives. That's another story. But, if not, then yes, you would want to stay where your tax basis has kind of remained the same. But
yeah, I mean, the tax basis may change because once you're getting a permit,
it's going to be reassessed.
It's going to be reassessed.
Yes, absolutely.
But it's still a lot less than if you were to buy a brand new house.
Yeah, yep.
And, I think it's, I would think now, especially in LA where everything's so expensive, I would highly recommend looking into ADUs first.
Okay.
Unless, of course, you just want to move to a different neighborhood, then that's a whole different story.
Right, that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
And what would you say would be, so when you're using your investor eye, what are you looking for?
For me, I look for areas that have a lot of ADUs for my purposes.
And what areas would you call out?
Well, Los Angeles is very, very, open to doing a lot of ADUs. They very encourage it. So, I'm looking at areas where I know, and I've already worked on. I'm looking in like Northeast Los Angeles, maybe Burbank now, because I have a few projects out here.
Okay.
And, where there's a lot of comps, basically.
Okay. Which helps bring it in for a bank so that it's easier for you to put a package together that makes sense. That
Right,
you can budget.
right. And there's so many different types of ADUs too. You mentioned garage conversions, which is assume that's the only way to do ADUs when it's not.
Tell me more.
Yeah, so there's also something called junior ADUs, which is effectively you can carve up to 500 square feet of your existing home.
Okay. Oh.
And make that a third unit if you want to.
Okay.
Or if you have a basement that's underutilized, that's maybe considered uninhabitable, you can make that what's called junior ADUs. Or you can do a completely separate new construction.
Okay. Attached to the house?
It doesn't have to be attached.
Okay.
It could be detached. It could be attached. It could be detached.
Okay. Attached or detached?
Yeah. So
does it have to be a certain amount of square footage?
Maximum 1,200 square feet.
Okay. Does it have to be? It can't be more than half of the size of the original footprint of the house. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the current standings, but some cities are fairly flexible.
Okay.
With that, you just got to, like I said, every city's got their own limits.
A little bit. So what originally they were saying is if you wanted to build an ADU, let's say your house, a lot of these really 1950s post-war homes were about 1,000 square feet. If you wanted to build an ADU, your ADU could not be 700 square feet. It could only be 500 square feet. In other words, it can only be half or less than half of the square footage of your original footprint of your house. So that's what he means. But some areas are a little flexible.
Some areas are a little flexible than that. Like in Eagle Rock, I'm building a new construction ADU.
Okay.
And, the original square footage on the front house is about 1,500.
Okay.
But I'm building 1,000 square feet.
Wow.
2-story.
Oh, whoa.
So I got approved. So it's
just
beyond,
the city, yeah.
So it really depends.
Okay.
And
city by city, and you make friends with city inspectors like nobody's business.
Yeah, it's really the planning.
The city.
You got to go through the planning first, and that's where you find out whether you can do it or not.
Yep.
Because once they sign up, once they sign off.
Yep, it's done.
On that, it goes into building and safety, and that's when building inspectors are part of building and safety.
Yep. But once it's signed off through the planning stage, that's the green light, pretty much.
It goes back and forth.
Back and forth a little bit.
It goes back and forth. So, that's why
are you bringing biscuits and coffee and donuts and everything to those people during that stage?
I wish I could. I wish I could, but
Cookies,
these days,
since
COVID, everybody shut down. They're like, just submit everything online. So you can't really,
Yeah, you can't really.
You can't bribe them anymore.
With donuts and coffee, you'd be surprised how far that went. But that's interesting. Okay.
Well, here's the other thing too. So multifamilies you can do ADUs on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'm buying 4 units.
Okay.
And adding 2 ADUs in the back. So now I'm going to have 6 units.
Interesting.
And with multifamily, you can actually even convert additional uninhabited areas like offices. You can even take away parking too.
Wow, you could take away like some garages that are not being used? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Garages, if you have something called soft stores, I don't know if you guys have seen apartments where they have parking on the first floor.
Yeah.
Well, those are some apartments, maybe most apartments actually, are needed to be retrofitted because they don't conform to the new standards.
Retrofitting standards, yeah.
Yeah, so if you were to retrofit, you might as well build ADUs.
It's
going to cost you just a little bit more, and now you got more units.
Wow. Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
so are you talking like because any 1 to 4 units multifamily is still considered residential. Yeah, 5 and above is considered commercial. So are we talking 1 to 4 multifamily, and then you can build an ADU?
You can go above.
You can go above, no problem.
But
it's the 1 to 4, no problem.
Yeah.
You can still do ADUs on.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
So are you taking over? Well, I guess it doesn't matter. You could build a structure independently of it. You could take over parking structure if they're not using any underutilized space. Wow.
Yeah, so we have a few projects in like Long Beach where we took 4 units.
Okay.
And they have 4-car garages.
Yeah.
We're taking the 4-car garage and turning them into ADUs.
Oh, are you 4 individual ones or 2 or?
Well, it depends on the size.
Yeah.
But for this particular one, I think we built, with the 4-car garage, we built 1 ADU.
Yeah.
Pretty nice size.
Yeah.
But we're also, like, I have another one in Silver Lake where we have a 4-unit. We're building 2 ADUs in the back.
Attached or detached?
Detached.
Detached.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that is fascinating. And then
And so once we are done with that,
it's going to be, is it going to be zoned then commercial if you're going to have?
well, it's still multifamily.
It's still multifamily.
Yeah, so now you can find lenders that would now look at it and appraise it as a commercial because it's now 6 units.
That's right. That's where I was at. Does it change as far as
It should, because now it's going to be
6 units?
It's going to be 6 units. They're
Right.
going to factor in the rental income,
Yep.
and so it's going to be based off of cap rates.
Yep.
And so
Wow, that
so it's
puts it in a whole other
great
category.
way to increase the value of that property.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different, strategies that you could apply onto this.
We're kind of going off just a smidge a little bit, but are you going to do any 1031 exchanges with any of these guys and roll that investment over and to keep stepping up your basis with those guys?
Of course.
Of
Why
course.
wouldn't I?
Have you already done that?
I've done it once.
Okay.
But quite honestly, I just like to build stuff.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time letting go of anything.
Yeah.
It's like building. These are like my babies.
yeah.
So it's quite difficult to let go. But at the end of the day, it's like if the numbers make sense. They make sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that is fascinating. So I guess we're kind of wrapping up here, but just wanted to say, what would be your word of advice to anybody that's thinking about an ADU, or besides checking on the zoning in the municipalities, the local municipalities? Obviously, there's value there or potential value there, but just kind of taking your investor chops and your ADU knowledge and experience, if somebody were going to start to maybe baby step it, what would you say?
I would say just start with surrounding yourself with experienced investors or anyone that's actually done this. There's a lot more information now. Do your research. You guys can follow me if you want.
Great. How can we follow you?
I'm on Instagram.
And what's your
Alvinized, ALVINIZED. That's my IG account.
Okay.
Or I'm also on Facebook.
What's your Facebook handle?
I don't even really know. I think it's Alvin Uy. You see how prepared I am
right?
for this?
Yeah, no, it's awesome. That's great. Well, I don't know. It's like Facebook is not used so much, but Instagram, you had that one,
Yeah,
so that's good. As long as they get to-
Instagram,
Yep.
I was a stealth wealth guy. But now, you know what? I got to teach more people about this because I believe in it. I feel like it's the next thing to do.
And it's also pretty cool that you get to pay it forward.
Yeah. And that's part of what I want to do.
Yeah.
Trying to extend my family's legacy and just help
much
people as I can.
And you never know who you're going to, you never know who's going to hear this podcast, and you never know who's going to listen to this and get a piece of information that just might give somebody the courage to say, I might be living in a 1-bedroom apartment right now, but maybe I too can have the courage to reach out and start to become a baby investor and build my own family legacy. So I love that. Thank you, Alvin. Thank you so much for coming today. Thank you. You were awesome. Thank you guys again for coming to the Real Estate of Mind podcast. As you know, I love what I do, and I love having people on here with interesting stories and talking about real estate, but also just bringing really helpful information that hopefully gives everybody the courage to jump into the real estate market, baby stepping or full on, just full force out. I love it. Welcome back. We'll be on with another episode very soon.